My name is Andy Christov, and this is Pathbend, your guide to personal growth and healing, blending science, art, and spirit. It all begins with a story. Not one you write consciously, but one that's written for you, long before you can understand it, long before you have the words to tell it. This story is your life script, a subconscious blueprint that shapes the narrative arc of your life, your relationships, your choices, your destiny. You can think of your life script as your operating system, a piece of software that always runs in the background. Some life scripts are constructive, leading to joy and fulfillment, but others are destructive, locking us into endless loops of failure, suffering, and self-sabotage. And each one ultimately leads to one of two endings: a miracle or a catastrophe, a life well lived or a life that ends in despair. Our scripting begins early, very early, between birth and age 6, before you know who you are, before you can separate yourself from the world around you. You look to your caregivers for answers. Am I safe? Am I loved? Am I worthy? If they reflect care, love, and stability to you, you develop what's called a secure base. You learn that human interactions are safe, that your needs matter. You grow with a solid foundation, a constructive script that gives you room to explore, to form healthy relationships, to bounce back from failure. The final act of this constructive script is a comedy in the classical sense. It's a life filled with connection, growth, and contribution, a life where hardships and suffering exist as they invariably do for all of us, but they aren't debilitating. But that's not how the story unfolds for everyone. Imagine a different child growing up with inconsistent or neglectful care. One day she's held and loved, the next she's ignored or criticized for her needs. The child's sense of self becomes nebulous. The world starts feeling unstable. Relationships become unpredictable. And love comes with conditions. For this child, the script begins to shift. She likely develops an insecure attachment style. It could be an anxious one that manifests as fear of abandonment and rejection. She chases love but doubts it'll stay, constantly anticipating rejection. As an adult, she might cling to partners and sabotage relationships with jealousy or neediness. Or take the child who learns the opposite lesson, that the safest move is to pretend you need nothing at all. He develops an avoidant attachment style, suppressing his emotions and distancing himself from others. He grows up becoming a master of independence, but his relationships remain shallow due to fear of intimacy, often collapsing under the weight of unspoken fears and unmet needs. For these people, life is a constant balancing act, demanding excess energy and effort. It's like driving with a flat tire. You still get to your destination, though it takes much longer and burns a lot more fuel. If you're looking at those people from the outside, you don't see much. There's not a lot of drama. There's no spectacular implosion. But such lives are rarely fulfilling. The story teeters on the edge, a toothless narrative of quiet desperation. But there is a darker side, a deeper tragedy. Some children experience something far worse than inconsistent care. They grow up in loveless homes where trust itself is dangerous, where their very being is under attack. These are the children of trauma, abuse, and betrayal, children who have no choice but to develop radically different strategies to survive. For these children, the script isn't just unhealthy, it's catastrophic. All too often, they become the dramatis personae of psychiatric wards and personality disorders. Take the narcissist, for example, the child who faced so much external pressure early on that his emergent self simply caved in and imploded. Maybe he faced violence or ruthless expectations or punishment for showing weakness. Or maybe he was used as an extension of his parents' own inflated egos, valued only when he performed and discarded when he was vulnerable. To survive, such a child is forced to abandon the fragile parts of himself and build a protective shield, a false self. This is a process yielding a polished mask that protects him from the shame and pain he wasn't equipped to face as an infant. The true self is gone. The false self emerges triumphant and takes over, a shimmering mirage that exists only as a light reflected in the gaze of others. The narcissist's script is one of grandiosity and control. He creates the illusion of strength and superiority, relentlessly pursuing admiration in an attempt to fill the void inside. But the void inside has no bottom. His story rarely ends well. The narcissist doesn't just hurt and abuse others in his constant pursuit of narcissistic supply. He traps himself in an emotional prison, doomed to defend a self that is irretrievably gone. Then there's the borderline, the child who spirals into borderline personality disorder. Such a child didn't just experience rejection, she lived in chaos, marked by verbal, physical, and often sexual abuse, punctuated with sporadic acts of care. She was never fully safe, never sure if she was wanted or despised. Unlike the narcissist, the borderline didn't manage to build an impermeable false self. Her ego didn't quite implode fully into the black hole of narcissism, beneath whose event horizon the true self is swallowed whole, never to emerge again. Instead, the borderline's empty core lies exposed like a carcass of a dead star that hasn't fully collapsed into itself, the shards of guilt and shame gravitating around like a diffused cloud, too chaotic for a coherent identity to coalesce and take hold. Similar to the narcissist, the borderline's life script is a tragedy of endless repetition, what Freud called repetition compulsion. She craves intimacy, but at the same time fears engulfment. She pulls people close and idealizes them, only to push them away and ultimately discard them in impulsive acts of self-sabotage, terrified of being abandoned, yet guaranteeing the whole process will happen again and again and again, reenacting the traumatic past while leaving a trail of broken hearts behind. The borderline's final act? Without dedicated treatment, it's often all-pervasive loneliness and the crystallization of her worst fear, that she is, in fact, the bad object she internalized from her abusive caregivers, unworthy, unlovable, and broken beyond repair. The tragedy of such life scripts is that they were once adaptive, once protective. They were the only way these children could survive their chaotic early environments. But left unchecked, these patterns ossify into prisons with thick walls, repetition compulsions that inexorably pull the protagonist into the same destructive vortex over and over again. So for many of us, the cards we were dealt as children shaped the grand arc of our lives. The script plays on, undisturbed, until its final act. And all too often, this act is not an individual tragedy, but an intergenerational one. Destructive life scripts are contagious, often passed down from caregiver to child, each generation trapped in a story they didn't choose. Trauma, unmet needs, and maladaptive patterns don't disappear. They find new hosts. This is the legacy of generational trauma, the sins of our fathers played out again and again in new lives. Hurt people, as the saying goes. Parents who were wounded in their own childhoods often reenact that pain, unknowingly scripting their children into roles of abandonment, perfectionism, or low self-worth. It becomes a chain reaction, one that can only be broken by someone brave enough to confront it. But courage is an option only where awareness exists. Therapy, deep reflection, and self work can help many people rewrite their destructive life scripts. But the uncomfortable truth is that there's no miracle cure, no single self help workshop, no aha moment that reshapes everything. Life is a process. The path to a new, more hopeful ending is arduous, thorny, and for some people remains incomplete. In classical theater, a tragedy isn't tragic because of suffering alone. It's tragic because of the belated awakening to the downfall and the overwhelming regret that stems from it. But fortunately, no matter where you are in life right now, you still have time. Awareness, the simple act of naming the script, is the first step in a long, dark tunnel. Because in the end, there are two scripts in life. And the question is, will yours end in darkness, or will you step into the light?